Let's now move to some more pressing societal issues. As we celebrated Father's Day only a few days ago, mental health issues amongst men is rarely discussed. Now, according to reports from the National Library of Medicine, roughly 50 million Nigerians live with mental disorders, according to a World Health Organization report in 2017, whilst about 29 million Africans live in depression. In Africa, internalization of masculine norms amongst men has been reported to make men more susceptible, I beg your pardon, to mental health problems. Now, today on the show, we'll be focusing on mental health of the menfolk, and we have joining us Tolulope Ogunjuyigbe, the lead therapist at Nguvuhealth, a telehealth company which is solving the problem of limited access to mental health care by providing easy, affordable access for therapy for Africans and Africans in diaspora by taking advantage of the internet and smartphone penetration. Thank you very much, Tolulope, for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
All right, now let's talk about, why this month we're looking at mental health, and there are important conversations. Of course, Osaoge Ogboma will be joining us on this because he's a man. I mean, so he'll be able to tell us. Osaoge, I'm sure you're very excited about this.
What if I choose to identify as a woman?
You did what?
I was going to mention.
What if I choose to identify as a woman?
No, you cannot identify as a woman, Osaoge. Now, let's direct the first question to Tolulope. Tolulope, tell us, what are some of the major challenges that the society has passed or posed towards men in the areas of mental health?
Well, technically, when it comes to the anatomy of both the male and female, there's nothing, there that presupposes that there should be this disparity in the severity and incidence of a mental health issue. But of course, societal norms and the expectation from the masculine gender sometimes presuppose that men are not supposed to show weakness, men are not supposed to verbalize, some of their insecurities, their challenges, and sometimes this gets very, very toxic in itself because access to care, it's not, men have that thing where they internalize their problem because that's the expectation of society. You have to have that thing wrapped up, packed together. You are the head, you understand, and not the tail, or you are this, or any of those other, sayings that presuppose that men are supposed to be like the embodiment of perfection when it comes to identity. And some issues are seen as beneath men, especially when it has to do with mental health challenges. So these are part of the endemic problem that we've had to face when it comes to men. Men are less likely to, access mental health care, and there are statistics to suggest that in itself, and
why are they less likely to access mental
health? Society, basically, norms that has been internalized from, formative ages, ages of, 3 to, early adolescence, where men are supposed to be the one in charge of certain aspects of life, and certain things are not expected of them. Women are expected to show emotions, cry when they're in grief and things like that. Men are expected to bottle things in your stand and not show those expressions. Those can be generalized into why men feel like, oh, women are attracted to strength, women are attracted to men who have things wrapped together, and then I do not want to show any vulnerability. I don't want to show anything that can be misinterpreted as weakness, because we're all about strength. Well, even to our own menfolk, we do not want to show that element of weakness, so that cannot be owned on by society. And then if our perception of strength is slighted in any way, it undermines our masculinity.
That's the toxic masculinity that we've been talking about.
And all these things are basically, you can find them, enshrouded in what societal norms have passed on to us from decades and decades of knowledge.
All right, let's bring in Osaoge in the conversation. Osaoge, I'm sure that you have thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, so many actually, but I want us to talk more on the mental health, concerns. How can men be more open to discussing mental health issues, and stuff like depression and the likes?
I found it very helpful that the strategy towards addressing this issue also, it's that sometimes we need to change the narrative. We need to get men in a room where men can talk about men problem, and that is not to alienate any other gender out there or anything. But sometimes men need to learn from other men that it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to want to show, that, subtle side of you. It's okay for you to verbalize your insecurities. It's okay for you to tell us what you're going through. It's okay for you not to tie the word to your chest, like they would say. And breaking those barriers, breaking those norms, and changing the narrative sometimes might be the most important step towards addressing men's mental health issue, because there are statistics to suggest that men are less likely to seek for mental health care, even when the mental health care is available. In our various facilities, we find that we are more likely to see women come in for issues about neurotic disorders, anxiety, depression, and things like that, or grief, or loneliness and things like that. But men are typically going to come in for serious issues like psychosis, drug-induced disorders like addiction and things like that, or failed attempted suicide, or externalizing disorders like intermittent explosive, things that are beyond the control of even people that are around them. It has to get that bad before they will in men in for treatment.
So they wait until it's gotten very extreme.
Yes.
So let's talk about, in the course of your work, you've definitely seen some men. What would you say are the most common issues that men come to you about, or the most common issues that are found in men? I'm asking this because, like you rightly said, they wait until it's escalated. But there are certain people that are dealing with depression, anxiety. So in the course of your work, tell us some of the issues that you've come across that men have as mental health challenges.
All right, so I'll look at it from the symptom aspect of it. Most of the time in mental health, people verbalize the symptoms as again because they really don't know what the disorder itself is. So we come in with a lot of sleep issues, insomnia. We come in with a lot of anxiety, worrying about things and that, and erectile dysfunction, which are also symptomatic to things like anxiety, unrealistic expectations as regards sex and things like that. So they come in with these symptoms basically to say, oh, this is my problem. I know I don't have anxiety, I know I don't have depression, but help me address this sleep issue. Help me address this, unhealthy interaction with drugs, alcohol, or substances, and things like that. But overall, I would say that chronic depression, takes the lead in terms of incidence or frequency of this mental health issue in my own practice that men had come up with.
Okay. Osaoge, I'm sure that you have thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, sadly, a lot of these things, are barely ever spoken about, and, like he also said, a lot of men's challenges, with health, they're kept within themselves and they never really get to express them. And it might be one of the things, maybe because, they say real men don't cry and other, things like that are foster toxic masculinity. But I want to ask about, something, that a lot of people, have seen as normal. It's a societal norm, basically, that men don't receive gifts. A man can go, a whole lifetime and only receive, one birthday gift. A man can basically live his life and only be rated based on how much he is worth. He doesn't, in any way feel like he deserves to be gifted or to be taken care of, in a whole lifetime. If you remember also, we spoke about Father's Day yesterday, and it seemed like this was the most wholesome Father's Day we've experienced in a long time because, it's barely ever paid any attention to. So how much damage does that, cause men, living their lives knowing that, the society only rates them based on how much money they have or how much, that's basically the only reason they're important, and they never get to receive any gifts.
Also, that is so personal for me because I got my first birthday gift, I think I was already 25. Then.
Wow.
And till date, whenever I do get gifts from people, I don't typically know how to react. I feel like people expect something from me, like, oh, go gaga, show some form of emotion. I'm just kind of like just flat. I'm like, oh, thank you. And I'm wondering, is that emotion enough to show gratitude to that person? Yeah, it's quite very true. Expectations from men are generally that be providers, Even our own testosterone doesn't even make things easier because our reinforcement comes from our ability to be able to protect, to provide for people that we love. So there's somewhere they're wired in our subconscious to be the provider. But even the provider at times wants to be appreciated. So how do men get their, how do they get validated for the roles that they play in society, for the roles that they play for their loved one? And it seems like the requirements of men, especially the psycho-emotional requirements of men, have been relegated so much because they feel like it's not a needed thing. If you are a man, you only need wife and somebody to cook food for you. You understand? You can kill yourself all day long. Men should be out there working, not at home, raising the children or playing any other supposed feminine role in the homestead and things like that. You're just supposed to provide. That's just what you do, and that's where you automatically get your reinforcement for. That narrative has to change because it has not helped. and it has constituted to the incidence rates of suicide, depression, low self-esteem, perceived feeling of selflessness, not being able to feel like your life had amounted to anything. People say that, when you look back on your life, it just seems like you'd worked all your life for people and things like that. Men need to be validated. Men need also to have their egos pampered, basically. I don't know if that's the right word to use. And these, as like also rightly said, it has constituted part of the things that society needs to address. And we need to stop teaching these things to the next generation. We were taught these things, you understand, albeit that we were not consciously aware that we were taught these things. But we need to do better as the new generation at hand, you understand. We need to culture the next generation on how to address this issue, you understand. While gender roles, you understand, are functional to a certain extent, we must also understand when it comes to emotional, psycho-emotional needs, you understand, there shouldn't be any clear-cut demarcation about who deserves what or who doesn't deserve what. Because at the end of the day, it's those little things that matter. When we talk about things like hopelessness and worthlessness, it's about how you perceive yourself and how you think you're being validated by people around you or what people see you as. And if you don't meet into that criteria that they have given for you, you feel like you're useless.
All right, now let's talk about something very quick before we wrap up the conversation. The ratio of therapists to citizens, it's a very, very far margin that we're looking to breach. We're seeing fewer people having access to therapy, not just because of the costs, but because of the accessibility and availability of therapists, which is something that your organization is seeking to bridge the gap. At what point would you say a man should seek therapy? At what point should he reach out for therapy?
All right, so at any point in your life endeavor, you need therapy, because therapy is not also only there to help you address psychopathologies or emotional distress. Sometimes it could be about adjustment, sometimes it could be about decision making, sometimes it could be about self-discovery, and sometimes it could be about interpersonal relationship as well. So at any point in time where you feel the need, so like I'm at a point in my life where I need, things to be put into the right perspective, psychologically, that is when you need therapy. Not necessarily until things get to that point where you are becoming very, very dysfunctional and things are becoming very, very obvious that you're in distress.
I mean, it's just like with medicine. They would always say that it's better that once you detect the symptoms early, you have a higher chance of dealing with the problem. So yes, we must all be encouraged to seek therapy. Thank you so much, Shola Ogunjuyigbe, for joining us, and well done to you and your organization for the work that you're doing.
Thank you for
now, all through the month of June, we will be having conversations about therapy, encouraging young people, young and old men, women, to basically express themselves and deal with the issues that bother them.